What is going on, everybody? It is me again, it's Horror Fan 34, and welcome to another video, and welcome to another review for the 31 Days of Horror Challenge in October. Now we are getting on to another review. Excuse me, I'm burping. I apologize. I'm going to check real quick. We're on day 22 of the challenge. And I figured this would be another really good one to talk about for you guys. I think this is from 1991, so we're going back. So we're going to the 90s now, early 90s here. And I rewatched this film again, and I truly will say it's one of the most underrated horror gems of the 90s. I absolutely love this movie a lot. Such a cool premise, too, for a film. And if you can tell by the title of the video, that review is going to be on Body Parts. Yep, Body Parts. And doesn't have a tagline on here, sadly. But, yeah, Body Parts. This is a film that came out in 1991, like I said. Directed by Eric Red. Now, that name sounds familiar. Eric Red, that's the same guy that directed the... I think he directed the original Hitcher, I believe. And he also went on to write things like, Near Dark, and he wrote Near Dark, and he also directed Bad Moon, which is a very solid werewolf movie. And I know he wrote the Hitcher as well, the original one. But this is another one that he directed. A lot of good people involved with this. It was written by Eric Red. Frank Mancuso Jr., who had a hand with the Friday the 13th films, was a producer on this. And it's such a cool idea, very dark movie, but the basic idea with this film is that you have Jeff Fahey. Yes, Jeff Fahey from The Lawnmower Man. He plays a criminal psychologist, and basically one day he gets into this car accident, and he realizes his arm has been torn off. Like in the accident, he loses his arm in a car crash. And then basically there's this medical experiment that goes on, and he's able to get a new arm attached to his body. And basically what he realizes is that this arm, basically this right here, this arm that he got attached to his body actually belonged to a serial killer who was supposedly dead. And then basically this arm has its own soul, and starts controlling what Jeff Fahey does and that sort of thing. Sort of like the predecessor in a way to Idle Hands. But Idle Hands was kind of done more in a comedic style, mixed with a little bit of horror, but this is much more of a serious, dark horror movie. And it was sort of in the vein of Evil Dead 2, with the arm going crazy, and Idle Hands with the hand going crazy, but those are kind of more done in the comedic sense. This is much more of a serious, dark movie with no comedy elements in it. This is a much darker thriller. And he basically comes to the conclusion that this arm belonged to a killer because he's talking with this prisoner guy that he captured, played by Paul Ben-Victor. Now, Paul Ben-Victor, that's a very solid character actor. He was the guy in Daredevil who Daredevil threw out, and he landed on the subway tracks and he got ran over. That's Paul Ben-Victor. He's been in a lot of other stuff too. And basically that's how he finds out that his arm that he has attached to his body belonged to a killer. And basically, spoiler warning, you find out that killer is not dead. He's going around killing people, stealing their limbs, so that way he can get the body parts back. So you get some pretty gruesome stuff, like when he finds this one guy, Jeff Fahey finds this one guy without his legs. Pretty much he gets his legs are torn off and very bloody and graphic. And you find out, too, that this guy has done it to other people before, and one of them that he talks to is Brad Dourif, who had this happen to him, too. And Brad Dourif, once a great actor as well. Loved, of course, in the Chucky movies as Chucky, Exorcist 3, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Great actor, Graveyard Shift. And Brad Dourif's death in this is really brutal when the killer he's hanging out a window and he gets his arm torn off by the killer, and very graphic stuff. It's very graphic in this film. And another... I say probably my favorite scene in the whole movie with this is when you have this cop in the film played by Zakis Mulkai, who was the bad guy in The Serpent and the Rainbow. I want to hear you scream, like that guy in The Serpent and the Rainbow. He plays a cop in this who's trying to help out Jeff Fahey, and there's a point where Jeff Fahey is in the back of a police car, and Zakis Molkai is driving the cop car, and then this other car comes up from beside them, and you find out the killer's in the back seat, and he handcuffs Jeff Fahey's arm so that way the killer can try to get his arm back. So there's this really cool, intense car chase where Zakis Molkai has to keep the car closer to the other car so that way the other car doesn't pull further away because it's trying to rip off Jeff Fahey's arm. So you have a pretty cool, intense little chase scene with two cars. It's a very original idea. Like I don't think I've never seen that done in the film before. And Jeff Fahey does a wonderful job as the lead. You feel sorry for him, especially this one part when he first realizes that his arm is possessed by this killer and it sort of like has its soul of its own. There's a point where he slaps his kid when he didn't mean to. There's like this arm is just controlling whatever he does. And when he first gets the arm, like he's having nightmares about how he's strangling his wife and how other women are being murdered. So then he realizes like there's like a little bit of a connection with this arm. And that's when he goes to talk to Paul Ben-Victor, who tells him about the serial killer, and he finds out that this arm that he has belonged to a killer. And the finale is a whole lot of fun as well. You get some shotgun fun where Jeff Fahey just goes to town on these people who did the medical experiment on him, and he just goes to town on their ass and just starts blowing them away with shotguns. And especially when he gets the killer, he just blows the killer's head off with a shotgun. And very fun finale. It's not a downbeat ending, which is good. It's a very, very satisfying ending. And I just think it was such a cool premise for a movie, you know. You sort of like take the predecessor to Idle Hands and you make it much more darker, much more brutal, more violent. And I think it works really, really well. I think it was well directed by Eric Red. I think he's a very talented writer and director. You look at things like Bad Moon, because that was such an original idea, too, with Bad Moon, where Eric Red directed it through the perspective of a dog with a werewolf, which is a pretty cool, you know, little idea for a werewolf movie. And I think Bad Moon is definitely one of my favorites of that kind. And I would say this is definitely like one of my personal favorite, like one of body horror films when it comes to like body horror. Not to like the extreme, like, you know, Videodrome or something like that where it's like sci-fi, but this is more of a serious dark horror film that deals with a body horror film. Like I said, if you took like Evil Dead 2 or Idle Hands with the concept of like a arm or a hand being alive and making it much more darker, and you get a film like Body Parts. The cast, like the overall cast, does a great job. Not only Jeff Fahey, but also Brad Dourif, Zakis Molkai, Paul Ben-Victor. I really like the musical score as well in this film. I think it's very well done, and you know, it's just a creepy concept. But one thing too I thought was really well done too is when Jeff Fahey first gets into the car accident. I really like the way that Eric Red directed and edited the shots where he just goes flying out of the windshield. I thought it was very well directed. It was all practical gore, like a lot of practical gore effects in this. It's such brutal things when Brad Dourif gets his arm torn off by the killer when he's hanging outside the window, and when Jeff Fahey finds the one guy without any legs and his legs are completely gone and torn off, and very graphic stuff. And you know, I absolutely love this movie, and I think it's a true underrated gem when it comes to horror films. So if you want to see like an underrated horror film, I would highly recommend Body Parts. And if you like films like Idle Hands or Evil Dead 2, where it's like a sort of comedic way on body horror, if you want to see a more darker approach to that, I think Body Parts is definitely up your alley. And I cannot recommend this film enough. It's an excellent movie. So that's pretty much it for my review for Body Parts. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.